Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Property Developers Podcast. We're going to be covering today and interviewing Oliver Corkery. Oliver is the CEO of Corker Brothers, a property development company. Hello, Oliver.
Hello, Tom. Thank you for having me, mate. That was very good.
A pleasure to have you on. It's been a long time coming. It's nice to see kind of your growth over the last couple of years. And I really wanted to bring you on because as a SME that's been growing and scaling, you've obviously seen the highs and lows of what we've been seeing kind of within the market, within the government sector over the last few years. And it's really great to have people like yourself come and do talks with us because it really gives a feet on the ground examples. I was speaking to someone today that went to a networking event, and it was essentially for local councillors just talking about kind of planning policy, and they were essentially just patting each other on the back and saying how fantastic we are and doing all these great things, and then actually having a local developer come in and say, well, actually, these are also the key issues that you're missing, and these are the improvements that can be made. And so it's nice to have people like yourself that are coming in, feet on the ground, in the trenches, so to speak, doing these deals, doing these developments, and having the experience to talk along with it.
Yes, definitely, Tom. I think what's nice from our side as well, we're quite sort of young and green to the industry, if you like. So, we're coming at it with a very different perspective. We haven't been in that industry for, no more than 4 years. And so we didn't sort of filter up through sort of the corporate structure of, national house builders and PLCs. We come from a very different background. Having that sort of modern thinking, forward thinking coming into the industry and that naivety, if you like, I think creates quite a unique sort of dynamic.
I think the naivety is good because, as you said there, if you go through kind of the corporate structure, then you will essentially be up against everyone else going through the exact same structure. And yet coming from a separate business, separate entity, and then having those skills that you can then apply to this, you might be able to look at things slightly differently and therefore see opportunities, kind of the wood through the trees sort of thing. So it's about trying to find those best deals. So kind of, I think the skill sets that you have, and obviously your previous or the business that you're currently running as well. I touch us a bit about that before you kind of got into developments. What was kind of your background?
We grew up in Paddock. We were based in Kent all our lives. We didn't do great at school. Didn't come out of there and go to college or university. So we haven't got no degree in much really. We were straight into the real world, working for Dad's firm. And that was a company called Small Loads at the time, which was just an aggregate supplier. We then sort of assisted and led that transformation about 10 years ago and transformed the business to what it is today called Corker. And we basically supply all materials for your garden. So that can be from aggregates to paving. We import from all around the world. We control our supply chain. And sort of that 10-year period of just figuring it out and doing and being naive and being a bit delusional at times, and figuring out different departments of how to run a business properly. That's from finance, customer service, sales, ops, marketing, brand, knowing how to position ourselves, knowing how to implement structure and reporting into the business, and align your team and build a good team and motivate a team and lead a good team. So that's sort of been our background over the last 10 years. And that gave us that business acumen as our degree, I would say, like real life doing the work degree to roll into what we're doing now, which is the development sector. But, to this point now, we've built an incredible reputation, our 15-mile radius, of sort of dominating that radius for supplying your garden. So if you wanted to get your garden, Tom, and you was from our area, most people would recommend Corker or say go to Corker. Or if we send letters out to people, a lot of them are our customers. That's how well known we are in that area. So that 10-year period, not only did we learn, everything about business that we needed to learn, but it set us up in terms of like reputation, trust, and being able to spring off that into the development sector.
Well, that's a great thing of having a good reputation. I think there's a lot of people out there that will kind of the get rich overnight sort of schemes. And it just goes to show that it doesn't work like that. It takes years of building these relationships, building this trust, investing in the company, investing in the community. And that way, kind of the degree of reciprocity by kind of growing and scaling from that, you're then able to get the right people within. And I guess with you kind of working on the supply side, you also probably built some good relationships with local contractors and things like that. So when you kind of moved into development, you probably had some key contacts to tap up as well, right?
Yeah, exactly, mate. We know we're in the, we're builders merchants really, but we focus specifically on landscaping. So we've got like 15 show gardens, but we've also got trades side of it where you can collect and, trade counter, etc. But the model is like a builders merchants model. So we get all the builders in here. We know all the sort of subcontractors around here. So we know a lot of people in that trade really. And we know, we know a lot of people in this area because we've predominantly grown up in this area all our lives and we're very active in this area.
So run us through your recent site then. So just to give some context to the listeners, was it 5 units, was it?
Yeah, so obviously, just taking a little step back before we got that site, I met you doing the white box course, and that was a YouTube video that we found online. Literally watched an hour video, free video, sent that to Harry and said, let's go and do this course. We dived into that. We've done the 3-day intensive and then done another 3 days with you and John doing the sourcing and the planning side. Hit the ground running out of there, sending letters left, right, and centre using the PropTech Nimbus maps at the time. And we was also at that stage where we were sending letters, we was also trying to find people that could invest with us and back us and give us that capital to acquire the site. And so we were sort of simultaneously doing both of those. We eventually then got our first site, which was in Matfield, which is a very prime location. It was an incredible starter site, just 5 houses. They happened to be customers of ours. We appraised that site, put it all into a lovely offer pack, got them down to our show garden, sat with them, talked through that offer pack with them. And at the time, it had outline planning for 3 large barns, and we just took our time a little bit more, done some due diligence into that area to see what per square foot went for the highest value in that area. So we decided that we would split up 1 barn into 2 3-bed semis and then split up the largest barn into 2 4-beds detached. And that almost doubled the land value. And our sort of comparables and our valuation was, bang on Stratton Parker's sort of independent valuation. So we was dead right with, how we appraised that site in terms of like end values for the units. And it was super successful, mate. It was a real good starter site. So when we got that site, again, we didn't really know how we was going to acquire the site. We was just figuring it out as we went, literally. And at the point of us securing that site, Harry's trading took off because it was so volatile during COVID, and that funded us getting that through planning. And during that period, a very good friend of ours, a guy called Richard Bass, put us onto our now partner who backs us. He was very good friends with him. And so he came into the office one day and said, what are you boys doing? We said, we're just, been on this course, we're sourcing some land. And he said, you should speak to Michael. And so we said, yeah, excellent. We knew who Michael was, very renowned developer in the local area, has a team of 100 plus people in-house, main contractor as well. So he builds out the units, but also he's got a development arm. We took the site to him and he basically backed us, took us under his wing. So we got everything from capital experience team, the whole expertise suite. So it was a perfect partnership for us.
I love that. And that just goes to show the importance of simply putting one foot in front of the other and just moving forwards. I think a lot of people, they'll kind of go, well, how are we going to raise the finance? And then how are we going to do the build? And how are we going to do the exit? And how's the market going to look? And you can ask all these questions. And I spoke to a broker the other day and he was saying that if you found an opportunity to talk yourself out of a deal, you can do that on every single deal. There will always be an issue or there will always be a concern or something of that ilk. Actually, by kind of doing the way you've done it, have gone, right, let's try and find the site. Great, we found the site. Now let's analyse the planning permission. What can we do to enhance? And that actually also leads to kind of the learning of that skill set of adding value to the growth of the GDV. Because I think, again, people kind of go, oh, that site already has planning permission, so therefore the value's already been found. But actually, using kind of your skill set and going through the planning and redoing the appraisals and everything else, as you said there, you were able to double the land value. So by kind of using that development skill set, although the landowner sounds like they did the planning application and they did it from kind of their own knowledge, and equally a town planner will look at it from a planning perspective, but they won't look at it from a development perspective, i.e. the greatest exit value to generate for that site. And you've been able to kind of come in with that skill set and apply it.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. And I also think we was able to assess that because we're a very collaborative people. We're very passionate to work with good people, and there's always got to be alignment right from the start with them early negotiations, right? They obviously want the highest price. We obviously can't pay the highest price. And so like doing your due diligence and doing that work at the beginning to really communicate how you got to those numbers and clearly demonstrate how you got to those numbers creates that collaborative, creates that alignment, and creates that trust for them to buy into that vision, buy into those numbers, and ultimately back you and buy into you. Because if it's a garden plot, they're predominantly probably going to still live there, so they want someone that's going to be able to execute, follow through on their word, and deliver a good product that's going to be sat next to their house ultimately. Instead of looking at a site and, like most developers was probably doing with that site, lowball offer because they probably got other stuff going on. We actually took real time into the sort of due diligence period, but also a lot of time on how we would present that offer. That was extremely important to us. How did we come across? How did we present that offer so we stood out above everyone else because it was our first project?
And it just goes to show the importance of investing that time. As you said there's quite a few contractors out there that are super busy and they'll just send out 100 offers on 100 sites. They all be lowballs and hope that one of them will get accepted. And that's very much kind of a spray and pray sort of side of things. But actually, you've kind of gone down the longer term relationship building, demonstrating the trust, building that. And I think also, as we kind of said at the very beginning about reciprocity, these landowners often they'll know other landowners that own other pieces of land and things like that. And so again, if they didn't have a good experience with you, then they're more likely when they're down the pub and speak to other people, they'll say good things about you. And kind of similar to how you found your
100%.
partnerships, it's kind of building those relationships and having those positive referrals, especially when you're a local developer. And I think also for yourself, you can then, now you're looking at other deals, you can point to that site and use it as a case study and say, look at the time and effort you put into this site, look at the incredible homes we made. And then that's just going to help you on future builds, because as we've kind of seen with most national developers, a lot of these estates all look the same, all look very, very similar. And that's because they obviously focus on density and making much as profit as possible. But actually, by doing it your way and saying, we're local developers, we care about the local environment, and we want to do some incredible placemaking, I think that's a great way to get some landowners on side.
Yeah, and don't forget, right? There's a lot of profit to be made in development. It's also a very risky game, so things can go wrong if you do get it wrong. But the profit that you make and the overage and the agreements that you have in place with certain vendors and those structures, like for us, when we got to the mat field, there was an overage agreement, so there was a payment to be settled at the end. There was stuff that we didn't foresee that we would probably have liked to have claimed back on that contract, which didn't clearly stipulate, but because we had that relationship so strong with the vendor, to be able to go out and, instead of just like relying with your solicitors and having that rapport to be able to pick up the phone and sit down with them at the end of the project and say, wow, this really went well. And it also, you guys followed through on every single thing you did. It always makes those conversations around money and negotiations a lot easier. And don't forget, right? Money, I would never ever let a payment of money tarnish my reputation. So if I lose out on 20k, but I still keep my reputation 100% intact, mate, I would much rather do that. You see, you hear all sorts of stories of sharks in this industry just playing that short-term game, and we just not interested in doing that. We built our sister business on, proper relationships, following through on the words you give, and we get out from our mum and dad, mate. We play the long-term game, mate. We don't play no short-term game here.
I think you only learn that as well when your family have a local business and then you've seen it firsthand. I myself, so my dad has a local business as well, and he's invested, well, his granddad owned the company before him. And so this company's been running for 50 plus years now. And it just goes to show, again, building those long-term relationships. And they know that if they kind of go there, they're going to get that support and that kind of family business kind of care that they need. And then obviously, again, word of mouth, it then goes down to their kids and their cousins and everything else. And so your reputation is the most valuable thing you can have. And as you kind of said there, I've seen some people kind of do the property sourcing course and things like that. And they kind of try and squeeze every penny out of their first deal, and then lo and behold, their relationships in tatters, and then nobody wants to work with them ever again.
Do that, mate. Like I say, Basalts was a very successful first project. So people say, you don't earn a lot of money on your first project, but we did. It was the most money we'd ever earned in 12 months. And we'd done that site. We cleared that site from clearing that site to complete on the last unit, we've done in 14 months in and out. We marketed those through digital ads, very hyper targeted, local campaigns, refreshing the creative every month, every 6 weeks. When those leads came in, we nurtured those leads. They got a site update every month of our YouTube of where the site was, and we sold 4 out of 5 units off market. We could have sold the 5th one off market, but it was priced slightly high. So for us, partnering with our partner who we've got, who has all the experience in the build side, this is an important lesson, finding someone that has that clear expertise and experience on how to execute at that level of development was key for us, because that allowed us to fully focus on what we was good at. And that was, implementing technology and systems and structure, running good marketing campaigns and creative content, positioning the brand properly, and then communicating that and storytelling. Like, that's all the stuff that we was good at. Don't ask me how to build a house. That's our partner's experience. Like, for me, orchestrating the deal, knowing what sites do we go after, knowing what to put on there in terms of design, unit size, like having that vision is all our side of the sort of partnership.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that highlights a really key point where it's about knowing your skill set, what you're good at, and staying in that lane. I think so many people, again, never actually start because they kind of go, oh, I need to know absolutely everything about construction. I need to know absolutely everything about planning. I need to know absolutely everything about financing, etc. And again, if you're trying to become an expert in all these things, you end up becoming a master of none. And one of the key learnings
100%.
I actually found was when I went and worked, I mentioned this before in the podcast, worked for the national house builders. And you realize that in the big house builders, they all have their own departments. They have their marketing team, they have their sales team, they have their accountancy team, they have their planning, their land teams, their QSs, etc. They have all these different teams because they all play their own role, i.e. a cog trying to perform in a well-oiled machine. And if you're trying to be the whole machine, it's just never, ever going to work. You're spinning too many plates. And so what it sounds like you've done there is you found a good partner who had that skill set. And then you've been able to add value, one, by finding the site and doing that sort of things, but equally looking at the exit. I mean, being able to sell 4 out of 5 units in kind of a tough market has been a great thing to have, kind of a pat on the back for that.
No, exactly, mate. You're dead right. Having that diversity in a team, and knowing how to find those resources, knowing how to flex at what stage you are in terms of, like, do you bring on permanent staff or is it freelance or what? Just not having those skill sets of knowing that, your job as a developer is to orchestrate and to bring those people together to be able to execute. And those people that you bring together have to be of a high caliber. They have to be able to perform. They have to be able to execute. And that onboarding, the due diligence period that you do to bring that team together is extremely important. From solicitors to planners to architects to build team to marketing to sales, whatever it is, it's extremely important. That is key.
Great. So you've found your first site, happy days. You've got planning permission, you enhanced the land value, you got a partner, you built it out, you sold them, you've made your profit. Now what's kind of the next step for you guys?
So for us, Tom, the capital that we got out of Matfield, we was already planning that 6 months before it came into our bank. And that was, so not only was we planning it in a financial model, what we was doing with that, we was also planning on the sort of first investments we would make with that capital. And one of the priority ones was our brand. We wanted to reposition our brand. We didn't have a brand. We didn't, I just mocked one up on Illustrator for the first project to keep things lean, keep things tight, to understand the market. But then once we got that capital out, we really understood the market and we understood where we wanted to position ourselves long term. First thing we did was invest in our brand. And I was building those resources, like I say, 6 months before, going down a rabbit hole, finding the brand and sort of freelancers, the videographers, and understanding where to position that in terms of tone of voice, color tone on our videos, photos, whatever that was. We had a clear picture of where we was investing that. And the second priority was in our health. We done I've got colitis, so I'm on a drug, I'm coming off that drug, and we invested heavily into like blood tests and just to get a real sort of clear data and metrics on our own sort of bodies, because if we wanted to really run fast over these next few years, we wanted to make sure that we was fit and healthy to be able to do so. They was the core areas that we invested our money in: health and brand positioning and marketing. Springing off of that, Tom, after we done that, we've obviously built a reputation as official developers now. We've got an incredible pipeline in front of us. We've got 9 units that we've just submitted in our hometown, which is really exciting. So fingers crossed we get our decision due date 20th of March. We've got a pipeline. We're working on quite a large project for about 40, 50 units. And that's a mixed use development. So that will have like residential, social spaces, hospitality venues, fitness. That will all be operated by us. We have 11 units again in Kent. What else we got going on? We got loads. There's so much in the pipeline that we're talking to. Early stage conversations right through to being submitted for planning and in contract.
That's great. I think the marketing side is really key, and we'll touch upon that in a second. But first, we'll just talk about the health side, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake where they sacrifice their health, which is obviously a beacon of wealth, to chase money, essentially. I myself have been kind of part of that as well. When you're working 12, 14-hour days, trying to grow your business, trying to scale, trying to do site viewings and appraisals and offer packs and everything else, you do spread yourself thin, and your health often is kind of one of the first things to go. And we were talking about it in kind of our recent Property Developers Network event, where we're talking about kind of people's New Year's resolutions, and actually come February, 80% of people give up on their New Year's resolutions, which is often kind of quitting smoking or going to the gym or something like that. And it's always health, which is one of the first things that people give up on. But as you kind of said there, health is the thing that is the most important thing in the world. And a lot of people I remember seeing an interview, and they kind of went and asked kind of a lot of elderly people, and they said that they would give all their capital away to feel 30 years younger. And it just goes to show how much time and health people forget about until it's too late.
Yeah, so without a doubt, mate. And I think you should always define your core pillars personally. It's not like you can have your pillars in your business, but to define your personal pillars, whether that be, being more present for your family, investing more in your health, business performance and focus, better structure, understanding those pillars and then really staying disciplined and true to those, and, setting in some goals and actionable goals that you can move towards. A lot of people sort of set these huge, big, audacious goals, but they don't have an action plan or a structure to be able to move themselves towards them.
Well, as that kind of goes back to what we're saying about just putting one step in front of the other. It's all well and good having that North Star, but then you actually need small, actionable steps that will get you to that North Star. So let's just go on to the marketing side, because I know that you guys have put a lot of time and effort into kind of the branding of kind of growing the business, and it looks fantastic from the things that I've been seeing on social media. And I think it's definitely a key thing in the modern age that most developers, the older boys, shall we say, that have worked in the construction side, or some of the major house builders, they'll kind of put it on Rightmove. They might do a show home, and then they'll kind of just see what inquiries come in. But actually, the ones that really seem to be winning are the ones that are building these brands, as you kind of said there, and to get to the point where they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've got a Corker home, for instance," and that's the sort of brand that you want to be building. And so, tell us a bit more about kind of the marketing, the branding side that you've been investing in.
Yeah, so I think the angle on how we like to approach things is always to think different and bring a level of modernism into a traditional sector. Really, we've done it here at our sister business, and it's just a natural sort of skill and instinct that we have. So I always like to look at what's going on in the industry, to understand like what everyone is doing in terms of like repeating the same tone of voice, the same keywords, the same buzzwords, the same marketing strategies, whatever it is. And I always like to do the opposite. I always like to try and find where we can position ourselves where there is opportunity and disruption, and how we create our own lane to come up into this very congested and competitive market and really create our own lane to create noise and create awareness around our brand. So that's the first step of being able to do your due diligence and understand where to position yourself. And then understanding long term, where do you want to take the business? And if you have an aesthetic or you have a taste of what you like, and you believe it could work well positioned like that in that industry, then find the graphic designer, find the marketing team that can help bring that together. And so graphic designers, they all have different styles. So that one might be more minimalistic, might be more sort of commercial led. And so you have to find those resources. There's not one graphic designer that can do all, in my opinion. I like to find specialists in those areas that is going to align with us. Again, finding that team, making sure they're aligned, they believe in the project, and they're as passionate about you as the opportunity that you're presenting them and pitching to them to come on that journey with you. And so for us, to me, that is key to starting a business and key to creating momentum, is having that brand solid that you can really then communicate and storytell and start to build that repetition and momentum.
So taking the learnings then that you found on your first one, obviously it sounds like it was very successful. You were able to sell 4 out of the 5 units off plan and managed to sell all the units and exit that site. So there was obviously a lot of great wins on that site, but there must have been some kind of lessons learned as well. So are there kind of lessons, i.e. the marketing side, sales side, or perhaps just in its entirety that you're going to then be applying for future schemes?
Yeah, I think loads of lessons. It was our first project, so right from the basics of being able to integrate yourself with an existing community super effectively, and that can be like separate Facebook groups that you invite 12 spokespeople from that area to join, and you have instant comms and announcements of disruptions and just better comms on the ground day to day, because that ultimately is key for residents living extremely close. And if you look at most developers and most people sort of having something to say about developers, it is the level of disruption, a lot of it, that is caused from developments and lack of communication. So most of the time, what we found at Matfield, when you communicate and you're down to earth and you're telling people what's going on, they greatly appreciate it and they almost get on your side and support you. So there was that lesson of doing the basics super well. There was also the marketing side was a huge one for us. It just sort of felt a bit bizarre to us that people would sort of wait till right later on in the stage until almost like the homes are built and they're staged to start selling the houses. That just seemed absolutely fucking nuts to me. It still does now. When you've got a level of finance and interest that you're burning through, that just seemed a bit backwards. So my sort of thought was always to generate leads early, to nurture those leads, to create that awareness. We wasn't ever just selling a house. We was always storytelling. You're storytelling, you're building up that site, you're interviewing your architects, you're interviewing your interior designers, you're building that story and that brand of everything involved. And then also, like project management, we learned tons there. Partners system, they use Microsoft Projects, but still very traditional on sort of site meetings, which is, handwritten notes. Then you'd wait sort of a week, 10 days to get those handwritten notes, where, our next one, we've got Claude AI, which is on the back of my phone. That goes out to everyone instantly with meeting notes and action items. So loads of things. Onboarding, the person buying the house, how can we centralize all that documentation so it's one place? There's multiple systems out there that can do that. Do they integrate with like your back-end ops? Is that Monday.com you're using? So from basic communication on the ground with local residents, the back-end ops on how we're going to streamline structure using technology and all the systems to, effectively position your brand and marketing the brand. We learn fucking tons, mate.
What you said there just goes to show how many stakeholders are involved in property development and how therefore important it is to have a brand around you. For instance, there's a site near where we live, and Persimmon have just gone in for a planning application, and all the comments are like, oh no, not Persimmon, we don't want a Persimmon development here. And I think they're number 5 in terms of largest developer in the UK or around that. And it just goes to show how kind of negative brand can really have an impact on that.
Massively, mate. And that's if you don't take note of what's happened before you get into that industry, and you're going to get into the industry to simply repeat what's going on in the industry, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you want to get into an industry and do that? Surely our objectives as newbies moving into an industry is to innovate, is to modernize that, is to disrupt and think outside the box. Now, I know, a lot of us don't have that natural ability to do that, but that should be core priority of when you look to entering into an industry on where to position yourself. It's so important.
Well, Stephen Bartlett talks about this when he's talking about entering a market and essentially copying someone. If you copy someone, all you're going to be is the second best version of Taylor Wimpey or the second best version of Vistry or any other major house builder. And I think a lot of people go and just copy what's already happening within the market because it's a safe bet, and they kind of go, well, it works for them, so it must work for me. But they seem to forget that as an SME, that is your risk in the sense that you don't have the same sort of funding lines as a large house builder, but equally it's your opportunity because you have the flexibility and the agility to do certain things, i.e. implementing software like you just said there, or some of the major house builders it would take them a long time to make certain implementations into this. So it's just about kind of figuring out where the opportunities lie for you and applying it.
Yeah, exactly, Tom. And, we talk about like everything that I learned at the project, I also take a lot of lessons from what others have done, and we don't take on sites that we ourselves wouldn't want to live in. Location in this game is fucking key. You get that location wrong, doesn't matter what you build there, you could have a right stinker of selling them units, especially in a tough market. So location to us, positioning, like, what are you designing there? What is that is that place making strategy that you're creating there? Is probably number one over anything. Those sites that we assess, you can't go after every site. You've got to know where to spend your energy and know what to be able to go after. That is key. It's like don't be a fox and sniff out everything. Be a hedgehog and be mindful about what comes at you. Put your spikes up, assess it, and choose the right bloody path ahead.
I've never heard of that description before, but I will definitely be taking that one away. Listen to everyone, be a hedgehog.
When I met Richard Harpen, who sold HomeServe, he said to me, pay attention to the hedgehog strategy. Don't be a fox.
I like that. I like that a lot. So as you kind of said there, the power of brand, the power of marketing, the vision of where you want to kind of grow and scale. And you've obviously also seen firsthand the property market over the last kind of few years and how that's kind of changed and flowed and everything else. Is there anything that you're kind of looking to do to kind of hedge and protect yourself? Or is your view, if you invest in the marketing and the brand and you find the right sites, well, then the deals will still be there because that's where the best value will be?
Yeah, I think for us, Tom, we've done really well at Matfield, but we've got our feet firmly on the ground to be able to repeat that again. It was a great location. It was a sort of like mini boom coming out of COVID. We wasn't in the toughest market then. However, I do think we could do the marketing better. I do think we can generate more leads by doing it earlier. And I think, so to your question of like mitigating our risk on our next project in a tough market, it is to really build that brand awareness at top level. So we've got, we're building out a marketing strategy for what does that look like at brand level, but what does it look like at project related level as well? Because ultimately there's specific activations and campaigns that we need to focus on to build out around promoting that project. But how do we also continue to build our brand as a thought leader and to bring people on that journey and build that community for the mission we're on of disrupting the sector? So there's multiple things to think about, and I think already, we're announcing all the time to our database. We've got a 330 person database from 5 houses previously. That's one of the reasons why we didn't want to go on Rightmove, because we wouldn't have been able to have access to that database. We controlled all that ourselves. We nurture those leads every month. There was an email that went out just before Christmas talking about the rebrand, the story behind it, what the logo meant, why we chose that typography, why there is a crest. And then there was an email that went out last week, which was all about submitting planning for our next scheme. And instantly we had an influx of people inquiring about it, okay, that didn't miss out on Matfield, but they was really interested in our next project. And there was probably 12 people, 12, 13 people that are super interested in 9 houses. Now, we haven't started running any digital ads. We haven't done any offline activations. And when I say offline activations, I mean, when I get planning permission, I'm throwing a planning permission party. Yeah. And what that allows me to do is invite our exclusive database early doors into our architect studio to see the drawings, meet the architect, meet us, but also to create content out of that day, to run, campaigns and to share on social media and share with our database. So yeah, I think the level of marketing and the brand awareness around what we've created around Corker Brothers, which is ultimately me and Harry, this very unique set of brothers that are coming out of this location that we've grown up in all our lives to disrupt an industry and to do things really of high quality and really thoughtful, I think is completely unique. So it's my job to be able to effectively communicate that and build that wait list for our brand and build that excitement, which is that will mitigate our risk because we have such a waiting list by the time we come to selling in houses.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I can see the passion when you're talking about it. And I think that's a real golden nugget for anyone that's listening. The planning permission parties, I think, is a fantastic idea because it goes back to what you originally said of one of your key ethos of collaboration. You're working with the community, you're bringing them in, and okay, fantastic. It helps you kind of on the sales side, but actually, it probably will help you in the future around kind of the NIMBYism as well. We talk about a lot of planning delays and things like that. And again, if you're a planner and you've heard of these guys, the Corker Brothers, and you know they're doing great developments, you know they're a part of the community, you know that they're going to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver, they're more likely, again, from a planning perspective, to work with you. And then from a locals perspective about writing kind of complaints and rejections about sites, again, you're more likely to get more positive referrals around that. So everything within that circular economy, I can only see the benefits.
Yeah, Tom, you're completely right, mate. And when we touch on that word NIMBYism, that is a real thing, but that NIMBYism comes from like an element of like not wanting change, but also bad reputation that's been created within that sector. Yeah. So, it's our job as newbies in the industry to change that perspective. And so when we run ads, we get a lot of backlash, but I've never seen a comment on my ads, which I haven't replied to personally, to challenge. I will not be tarnished with the same brush as everyone else. So, and ultimately, we've turned a lot of them into supporters, and I think like that creates a real human element of care and passion. Most developers run ads and they won't even reply to these comments. I will reply if you put a comment on my ad. I'm replying to you with my thoughts and what I stand for and what mission I'm on, and even to the point, Tom, of like, if I follow all the Facebook groups, mate. I'm in them all. So the minute I see a planning application that's ours that goes into them Facebook groups, I will engage, right? And if people don't believe me that I'm on a mission to change this sector and to do things differently, then I will host something in my show gardens that they can come down. I will present to them where our journey is now and the type of projects we're cutting our teeth on and where we want to go long term in terms of the innovative concepts that we want to bring forward that address infrastructure issues, that address biodiversity, that address inclusive communities, and addresses well-being, job creation, and so all this stuff for the mission that I'm on long term to achieve. I've got no problem with sitting down with these people and passionately sharing my views and where I want to go.
Let me know when you're running your next ads, and I'll be happy to leave some comments.
Yeah. give me some.
No, I think that's important. Also, I think from what I've seen, a lot of the time it is very much developer versus the locals, and that's kind of the way that environment's been for a long time. And by actually engaging with them, and opposed to being the faceless developer, as you just said there, running the ads, don't really care what the feedback is or anything, by actually personally responding to these people, running these events, doing these in-person things, having these conversations, engaging with these Facebook groups and things, you're again just refilling and reinvesting into that brand reputation, aren't you? And by having those honest conversations and calling people out and saying, no, we're doing this and these are the reasons why, people then, I think, respect that a lot more, and then people can understand it. I think it's change, as you said, but it's also a lack of understanding. And I think by having someone like yourself able to just come in and say, this is what we're doing, this is the reasons why, and this is how it will help, I think turns a lot of those negative comments into fans. Because I think a lot of people do want to see locals and local developers and local businesses do well. They want to support their own community.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And everything that we're doing, in my personal opinion, is positive. The change that we're bringing to the sector, the long-term vision that we have, the concepts we want to create, that our passion for people, our passion for our purpose to drive that business forward. I've got no issue putting myself out there, mate, and putting it all on the line for what I stand on. And I think we live in a world now where you shouldn't be scared to, put yourself out there because of what people might say. Like, at the end of the day, put yourself forward, be human, be down to earth, be respectful, engage with people, put yourself out there. And, it'll do huge things for your reputation, your brand awareness.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's nice to see. So let's just shift slightly now then. Obviously, we spoke about the local environment and community, and I just want to touch upon your brother briefly. Obviously, it's the Corker Brothers, and this is what you guys are doing in terms of the partnership side of things. But he's obviously moved out to Dubai, and you're in the UK. So kind of just briefly, kind of explain to me perhaps the reasons why you decided to going to stay in the UK while he's gone abroad, or explain why he's gone abroad, and perhaps now he's been there and you've obviously lived in the UK and you're staying here. Tell us a bit of kind of the pros and cons from what you've seen from both sides, because I think the issue most people have is they'll go on YouTube or they'll go on Instagram and you see so many people saying, where we're not happy with the market, we're not happy with the environment, we're going to go to the UAE or we're going to go to somewhere else. So it'd be interesting to hear from a local developer and someone like yourself that's been able to see it from both sides with your brother's involvement. What's kind of your opinion on all of that?
So for us, Tom, our structure is that for years, Harry trades in the financial markets, as you know, but the viewers won't know. So Harry's a full-time day trader. He was studying that for probably 10 years prior to him stepping away from this business and fully focusing on that as his full-time role. So that is his full-time job. He focuses on day trading. My job and my mum's and my dad's job is to grow our sister business, which is Corker. And then my role is to drive and grow the daily operations and the long-term plan for the development business. And that is a family structure. So our trading pot fund that Harry trades with is ours. Our development business, this business, and that structure for us works really well because Harry's out in Dubai. So we know we've now learned different tax structures out there, etc. He is also a different profile to me. So I'm a creator, head in the clouds, very, big thinking. I'm very good at getting things started, but my mind can easily wander and try and get onto the next thing as quick as possible. So, from experience, you have to learn to sort of pull yourself back a bit. But he's the opposite. He's a Lord profile, and he's very analytical, very risk adverse. He likes to know, the ins and outs. So he deals with all the contracts with the development. So he'll deal with solicitors, all the professional team, planners, architects, driving all that side forward once we get a site offered, accepted. But my job up until that stage is everything else, finding the sites, building the team, the brand, the marketing, the growth side of the business. Mate, without him driving that daily ops behind me forward, I'd definitely struggle. There's only a certain amount of projects we're going to be able to take on for Harry to stay at capacity for that. I want him to stay focused on his job, which is trading, and not pulling too much into the development. So yes, at the minute he's very involved doing sort of the back end ops, but the plan is over the next few years that we hire, a senior level management team, even to take my day-to-day role. I'll happily move over for someone to come in and take the chief executive role that has got much more experience than me, and I stay as that vision man, building that network, bringing in investment, positioning ourselves for growth while we have someone sort of run the day-to-day ops.
No, it's great to hear. And it just goes to show again the importance of having the right people around you. It sounds like you're very fortunate where you and your brother have two very different kind of personalities and skill sets. And so you're able to support one another. I was speaking to a Property Developers Network member earlier today, and they were saying that if they didn't have their business partner, they would have given up a long time ago, because just trying to do everything themselves was been too difficult, and having someone that they can trust, rely on to deliver on the bits and the areas in which they're weak is such a fantastic asset to have, isn't it? And that's where we talk a lot more about like you just said there, having the family and having the right people around you, but equally investing in those partnerships, because you have your brother who's the Lord skill set, and you who's the creative, and then equally you've now found that additional partnership, the third partner for the construction side. So again, kind of that strong basis of different skill sets and different knowledge between the three of you.
Yeah, and that, that creator, that profile, when you onboard someone and do that profile assessment, that is a super important part of that sort of due diligence period of bringing people on. What profile do they fit, and how are they going to slot into your current team, and what are you lacking in terms of skill set and profiles in that team to be able to execute on that growth plan. CFO could be a different profile, but what profile are you looking for? Is it, I'm talking about part of the wealth dynamic stuff that we've done, but there's loads of different ones out there. They all call them
Yeah,
sort of
my
different
Briggs,
stuff.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly that, mate.
great. Well, I think that's touched upon SME development side, the growth and strategy for you guys, investing a lot of time and energy into marketing and building that community and having that view of kind of growing and scaling. Really interested. Fingers crossed you get planning permission, and I'd be happy to come down and do a site visit once you kind of break ground, or once you've got planning permission. Happy to come to this planning party and see what you guys have in store. I think it's going to be a fantastic project, and I've really enjoyed following your journey over the last few years, and excited to see how you guys continue to evolve.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you, mate. Yeah, no, you're more than welcome to come down anytime. And, it's nice to obviously sit on a call with you and to be able to discuss, look, what we're 4 or 5 years in. I'd met you 4 or 5 years ago when we were starting our journey. So it's nice, it's nice to be able to have these sort of conversations and be able to actually reflect on where we have been over the last few years, mate.
Absolutely. Many more good years to come. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers, mate.